Hello everyone, my name is Zeph and welcome to the Star Network podcast. Today we have with us our special guest, Joe Kinvi, who's the co-founder and general manager at HoaQ. Hello Joe, it's lovely to have you here.
Yeah, good to see you, Zeph.
Yes, nice. I'm so happy that you could be on the podcast. I feel like we've been talking about this for months now and now you're finally in Lagos to make it happen.
Yes. Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
Awesome. So let's dive into it. So HoaQ, as we know it, is an investor community for Africa and its diaspora. And today you always hear about investment, but no one is really talking about the community around investment. What things did you notice within the investment space for Africans and the diaspora that made you decide that this is something that you needed to create?
Initially, it was nothing. So, I got like a newbie. Newbie approached me in 2019 and started talking about this Africa investment, all these things. And I didn't know much about it. The good thing was I knew about finance because I have a background in finance. And I just, say, yeah, what will it take to get involved in this? It turned out that we wanted to invest in early stage startups, except the barrier to entry is very high. Like you hear people doing angel checks, it's typically reserved for super rich people who can write like $25,000, $100K. And the little money that we had wasn't enough to meet these check sizes. Again, the wealthier, they'll call it small check. $25,000 is not small. And what we decided to do was, can we call upon a couple of people and say, hey, we saw this opportunity. Would you like to come together so that when we pull our small money, it becomes big? So that's how HoaQ started. It wasn't really a problem we wanted to solve. It was just that we saw opportunities. Africa, we have great concept of technology. We both worked at a technology company in the past. And we just wanted to co-invest in these companies. But then when we wanted to co-invest, then we started seeing the problems. It was very difficult to get a bank account. It was difficult to leverage any existing technology that was out there for our audience. So for context, there were 17 of us in Ireland that started HoaQ. And no bank would take us on it. Like, what do you mean you want to invest in Africa? The West sees Africa as or at least back then, as a charity project, right? You don't invest there, you send them charity money.
Correct.
And we're like, no. So we actually didn't open a bank account for like 3 or 4 months, purely because the whole concept that we're trying to explain to the bank, it just went over their head. And as time went on, we started seeing people from not just Ireland, but from the UK, from the US, from Canada, who were interested in, doing this along us. And we quickly started seeing that, okay, well, this is not like a 17 people project anymore. We have to figure out how to, make it formal. And then through the formalization, you start seeing more and more challenges. Like, which documents do we use? How do we set up a company? Where do we set up the company? What are the rules and regulations that, govern people from 4 or 5 different countries that want to invest together? So the more you are in this space, it's like you're pretty much scrambling across so many problems. And I always say that a lot of people told us that this couldn't be done because they're like, your money's not enough. And we proved them wrong. And we're where we are today.
No, that's amazing. And I'm so glad that you were able to pinpoint what the problem was. I'm very surprised that it was such a struggle to open a bank account. Yeah. And just for clarity, this bank account was for all the investors to put in their money.
Exactly.
And then be able to use that as a fund, so to speak, to then invest into different companies within Africa.
Correct.
Yeah. I find that quite surprising, but it's good to know you guys actually proved that there is a need for it and it's going to work. And today look at HoaQ. Yeah. But when you look at investor communities, because it sounds like you guys have always been in this space, you've been doing the research. When you look at general investor communities or investment opportunities versus where HoaQ is very specific for Africa and its diasporas, have you noticed essentially what are the nuances that you've noticed? Do you find that most people on the continent want to invest maybe in fintech, or agri-tech. So maybe someone in the West would assume, well, if you're saying you're investing in an African country, then it has to be agriculture driven. Meanwhile, that's not the case. People are looking at health tech, ed tech. What nuances have you been able to identify?
On this particular point, we actually noticed the nuances after we started. We started with what we knew. But the more people you speak to, it seems like, specifically on the diaspora, people leave their home country for, greener pastures. The money that they're making is relatively new. You start seeing that the people who have higher risk appetite, it's a very small proportion of the diaspora community. So while people want to invest, they don't want to lose the money like that. When you compare that to folks in the UK, for example, who've been there for centuries, they have higher risk appetites because they've done the less risky asset classes and have more appetite for something that's a bit more risky. That's why when you go to Silicon Valley, everybody does angel investing. When you go to, let's say, Yaba, well, maybe Yaba's not the right example, but somewhere in Lagos, you say angel investing, people they look at you like you have two heads. But if you say the same thing in Silicon Valley or in San Francisco, everybody knows what that is because that ecosystem is very mature. So this asset class, everything that has tech at the end, is very new. So what we are doing at HoaQ is at least helping them understand the risk that come with this asset class. But also, outside of HoaQ, be able to point them to other opportunities that are less risky. Because what typically happens is people who do angel investing, it's the leftover money that you don't have a problem losing. If you're somebody who's scared of, losing your $10,000, please don't do it. Don't do it. Go invest in something that'll give you safe and steady return. Maybe that return can be invested in angel investing because your base capital still exists. So those are the nuances. Like the diaspora, the money's new. People, especially in Africa, we're just coming out of poverty. We're having tech jobs for the first time, and it's not for the masses. So we need to be able to provide other investing opportunities. So companies like Rise Vests, Bamboo, they've been able to do really well because they are bringing people onto that investment journey. The banks in Nigeria have existed for a while, but I don't know to what extent they're enabling somebody to buy NVIDIA shares. And we've seen how NVIDIA has been doing over the past, 18 months or so. So we need a lot of companies, a lot of organizations that will enable investment opportunities. Because if you see what's been happening, I think last time I saw you to now, the Naira has just gone.
Correct.
And inflation has gone
Correct.
up. If you're not investing your capital, you are at least 50% worse off than a year ago. Correct. So the only way to hedge your capital is to invest. But you don't want to invest in angel investing, at least not yet, because first you need to protect your capital. And then, hopefully get more. And that's where the angel investing comes in.
Joe, I particularly love the point you mentioned about risk and, what you mentioned about Silicon Valley. They are more risk encouraged because they're used to the space. Whereas investors within African countries were still researching, were building that knowledge, etc. But I think a key thing for someone who is interested in investing, there's this fear based on risk, because you see a lot of startups today, maybe they've, inflated that valuation, they've put in all these numbers, and then at the end of the day, they actually can't deliver. And people who aren't getting access to the adequate research, or they don't even know how to read valuations, they aren't sure where to put that money. So when I went on your website, I absolutely love that there were a list of portfolio companies like, your Rise Vest you just mentioned, Lem5, even so Akuma Health, who I've even interviewed, amazing stuff. But the point is, how do I ensure that HoaQ has gone through a verification process to make sure that there is little to no risk with those companies?
So when you come to HoaQ, we'll always remind you that, this is a risky asset class and you may lose all or most of your money. So that is, if you go onto our platform, which I'll talk about, it's literally, it stays at the top of the page. Wherever you go, you'll always see this disclaimer. So everybody who's coming to this asset class need to be fully aware. But what we do to at least reduce not eliminate, but reduce the risk is we talk to every single founder that comes through the ecosystem. So first thing is we have a what you call an investment thesis, which is the parameters that guide our investments or the community's investment. And any company that falls outside of that, we don't even look at. So when you go to our website, and anybody can go HoaQ.co, you can fill a form. And when you're answering the question, you're answering the questions in line with our investment thesis. So that's the first thing. When we receive your application, automatically we can tell whether it fits or not. If it doesn't fit, we don't take. But if it fits, then we get on the call to be able to validate that whatever you're sending us is what the reality is. And we probably go to like 2 or 3 calls before even we bring this investment to the community. So we, maybe out of 100 companies that we talk to, 5, maybe 10 goes in front of the community. But that still doesn't guarantee investment, because as an investment community, or the people who are organizing this community, we don't make investment decisions. Meaning that every individual that are putting their money still have to read, watch the videos, attend the Meet the Founder session before they make a commitment. This is not sending money. So you as an individual, you want to make sure that on top of the work that HoaQ has done, you also do your own work. What we've seen is people who invest in some companies at HoaQ probably know the founder before, and they have some domain expertise. They understand the space. They work in fintech. So what that is to say is most people who invest in companies have a good idea of what they're doing, or they should have a good idea of what they're doing. And if they don't, we have resources available to them to self-educate. And anybody who joins the community today, I always tell them, please don't rush this. Take your time. Don't invest a ton of money. Start small. Start with the bare minimum. Our bare minimum is $1,000. Start with the bare minimum, and investment isn't something that you do in 3 months, right? It's like, you plant, you let it grow, and then you harvest. So like you need to give companies times to go through that growth phase and then hopefully we can all harvest. After doing all that, the risk is still high, because you can have companies, especially in Nigeria, fintech companies that are destroyed overnight because the CBN woke up one day and said, yeah,
one regulation or the other.
You're one regulation away from
failure. Failure. Yeah.
So and that's just the nature of investing in early stage companies. If it was that easy, everybody would be building companies and we'll all be rich. But it's not that easy. A lot of founders go through that process to build something that they believe needs to be built. And what I always say is you have to invest in the people, because people build businesses. So when you're assessing a company, you want to make sure that the people behind the business, you believe them, you trust them. You just don't invest in an idea. Everybody has ideas. Execution is what matters, and you want to make sure that the people that you're giving your money to can execute.
Correct. And I absolutely love that. I love your last point on everybody has an idea, but it's really the people behind it. I remember I was having a conversation with someone once, and they said, when you're looking at companies, particularly startups, you want to look at who that CTO is. And you also want to look at whether that CTO is part of the management team, because that person who's building the tech holds so much weight. And it's just something that has always stuck out for me, like the background, the education, the expertise. It's almost like how in banks they would say like corporate governance, but just looking at that structure of who is behind this business, right? So I like that the people actually matter and not just the idea. So that's something the audience will definitely learn from. I also like that you highlighted starting small, because sometimes it's very easy to get excited. Sometimes people want to say, oh, I'm an investor here, putting my money, but it's like, okay, wait, hold on. What's going to happen in 5 years or in 10 years? So, start small and then just watch, do the research, and then ask questions and just see whether the company is actually going to bloom. What is a challenge you have found within the space? As I want to call you you're an investor community gatherer, but what is the challenge you found within the space that nobody talks about?
Education. There is such a big gap in investor education, especially when it comes to the startup asset class. And you see So two things happen. You have people who provide free education like HoaQ, but self-serve, right? And then you have people who are on the other part who provide education, but it's like $5,000. Guys, please. Yeah. My partner Yewande she's just built this course. I think she's charging $500 for it, and she'll actually hold your hand through. That's the first problem. Education is a big thing, but also practice. You can read all the books that you want in the world. If you don't do the thing, you're never going to learn how it's done. So what I say to people is just take that $1,000. After you've learned, just try it. And don't even expect a return. Go through the motion of deploying actual capital, the smallest possible, it's not to go and shout you're an investor. It's just be like, I've gone through this process and this is my experience. You either love it or you'll hate it. And then you do it again. And like practice makes perfect, right? And you'll never be a perfect angel investor because, well, if you're a perfect angel investor, you're actually doing it wrong. Like when you invest in 10 companies and nothing fails, please, if the person is listening to this, let me know. I want to talk to you.
You'll talk to them.
And you have to allow yourself to make mistakes. The other thing people don't talk about is investment as a way to learn. If you want to learn about Nigeria, you should go invest in Nigeria. You'll learn. Nigeria is probably the best teacher. And because you have money at stake, you're very well you're invested in it, right? So if you want to learn about a particular country, a particular sector, put money in it. And you will learn very quickly. And don't put a lot of money. Again, put a bare minimum that will allow you to have access to more information than the average person who didn't. Because when you have money in it, like if you're reviewing your investments on a quarterly, biannually, or annual basis, you'll always go back to see, okay, what has happened to my company? What happened in the investor reports? What's happening? Who are the founders? Who are they hiring? Where are they hiring? You learn a ton by just taking that action. And this is not money. Because if you go take a $5,000 course, it's just a course.
Correct.
Is it worth taking?
Where's the execution?
Where's the execution? And it's going to cost you less just to learn. It doesn't have to be like $100,000. The other thing, the example I give is if you're a founder who want to build in a particular space, start investing in that space maybe 2 years before. So nobody talks about this, but like I am in a position to talk about it because I've done this for 4 years. It's still a drip because when you look at funds have a 10-year life cycle, right? So from when you invest to when you harvest, it's a 10-year. So it's a 10-year journey that anybody who wants to go into this asset class must be willing to take. And also like startup investment should be a mean of diversification instead of be where you pull all your capital. I can do it because I work in this space. But if you're just an average Joe, I use that term quite a lot. Don't please use that as a mean of diversification. So you have your safe assets, at least like 70-80%, and then you have like your medium risk, and then you have your higher risk, which is the angel investing.
Yeah, no, that's good. I like, you said if you want to get into a space, right, go and actually invest in that particular thing and just watch what happens. I find that to be an interesting concept because I would never have thought of that. And I think a lot of people who want to do business, let's say someone decides I have a fashion business idea or I have a hospitality idea, it's not a natural knee-jerk reaction to say, I'm going to invest in the hospitality space. I'm just giving an example. Does Marriott have a stock or something or like a franchise that can invest in? It's not really something that comes to mind. You just go online and you read. But I'm thinking that, are you suggesting this because if you invest in this space, you're able to see what makes that sector go down. You're able to see what trends make the sector actually then grow. And then in anticipation of your business, you can then prepare. So if I want to, do hospitality, if I notice that there is, another global virus has broken out, I know that investing in this space, these are the risks that I need to think about. So that's pretty much the thinking, correct?
So
okay.
Let me give you an example.
Please.
Right now, we are starting a property syndicate, i.e. we're putting money to buy real estate. I've learned so much about real estate in the past 3 months. And I feel like that's just the start. Once we deploy the capital into an asset, I'm sure I'm going to learn more, because all of a sudden I deal with property management. I deal with plumbing. I deal with a bunch of stuff, management fees and all the stuff that I just wouldn't think about unless I own property. So I'm looking forward to it. I don't own any property, but I'm excited to be part of this process. And I'm in Lagos. I'm looking some, viewings, and I'm looking forward to learning more about the real estate asset class, because has been the one that's tested and proven, especially in Africa. Like
to do well?
Well, not even that. It's just that Africans want to invest in something that they can see and they can touch.
Correct.
Like my grandfather got super wealthy because he bought so many houses. And now my mom, well, to some certain extension, me, are benefiting from the work that he did 50 years ago. And it's the asset class that we know it's safe, it's secure. You can see the house, you can see the land. So, and a lot of people do that. It's some people's retirement. My mom built houses back home because she looks like that's her retirement money. Because it's been, proven, it's tested.
Yeah, it's tested,
it works.
Correct, yeah.
And what we're trying to do with this real estate syndicate is, can we enable more diasporans to own a piece of a real estate across multiple African countries? And I'm sure they will learn as well about what it actually takes to, manage real estate in Nigeria. And if they're thinking about buying a house, maybe in 2-3 years down the line, this is the way in. And they're having this exposure to the behaviors of the real estate market in Nigeria, in Kenya, in South Africa.
Yeah, no, I like you mentioned, because I was actually going to say, I saw on your LinkedIn, you had mentioned a story, something about your friends.
It's a real story, by the way.
Yes, and I want to hear more about it. So your new, I'm guessing this is part of the new idea, PLTFM.
I'll tell you.
Exactly. So your friends wanted to invest in property, and they were in where? In the UK?
They were in Ireland.
In Ireland, and they were trying to pay for property in
Kenya.
Correct. And for whatever reason, the bank just wouldn't do the transfer or something. But tell us more about that story and why this has led to the idea of your property investments.
So, the property idea has been around for a while. It's just a matter of execution. The problem that they were encountering is the bank just couldn't understand why 2 young black women wanted to send $20,000 euro to Kenya. Where did you get this money from? Where's the money? So all the AML fraud, the alarm bells were ringing, because they don't feed the profile of people that can send this amount of money. And or are they being scammed by somebody in Kenya, right? So the bank has these frameworks in place most of the time to protect the people, to protect my friends. But a lot of diasporans, most people have jobs and they can save and they want to invest back home because they have access to what I call emotional capital. They want to put that money
own something
in their home country. So, and many people are doing this on Excel. And because they're going through this bank and then intermediary, and by the time that money gets to Kenya, it's lost 5-10% of its value because it had to be converted into Kenyan shillings. And Kenyan shillings is volatile. All these things that, something that can take 24 hours, 48 hours took 30 days, right? They ended up getting the money to Kenya, but they could have lost the property, or a lot of things could have happened. And I just think there has to be a better way. The reason why there has to be a better way is because the bank doesn't know them as a customer. It doesn't know the property developer as a customer. Is there a world where these 2 people can be on the same platform where we can KYC these people because we know that they're Kenyan-born Irish women based in Ireland who want to acquire property in Kenya because they travel to Kenya once a year? There isn't anywhere where you can connect these 2 people together. And also the bank has always served as a custodian to the capital. It doesn't always have to be those banks. It doesn't always have to be SWIFT. And because the bank is enabling the transfer, now it's more expensive because it has to go through SWIFT rails and it becomes super expensive. So I just think there's a better way. And just to talk about platform, what we're building it's the operating system for investment communities. And the reason why we started building is because HoaQ, as an investment community, we run it on low-code, no-code tools for 3 years. Just connecting Zephia to Notion, to this and that, Slack, Wise accounts, Stripe accounts, all these things that were kind of patchy. And over time, we wanted to just build something that works for HoaQ. Actually, the first request from a HoaQ member was like, Joe, I need a dashboard to view all my investments. My answer was, I'm not a tech company. Please respect yourself. We're not here to do tech. But I started realizing that if I can give them a dashboard to view their investments, what else can I give them? What else do they need? So platform will enable all investment communities, HoaQ. And HoaQ is a current customer of this. It'll enable HoaQ to manage the community. People come, they apply, they get in, or you decline them because it's a closed community. People can pay the membership, all these on platform. People can view investment opportunities. They'll send the money. They will do KYC. They'll view their reporting. So that's what problem, platform is solving. Yeah. For these two ladies, because we know them, we've KYC them, and we also know the real estate developer, can we give them access to platform so that they send the money and platform just send the money to the property developer after the property developer has provided all the documentation, right? Maybe after they've sent somebody to go check that this property is actually real. If you push it further, they are in Ireland. They're not ready to move back to Kenya yet, but they want to put this money, they want to put this property on the market. Is there a world where platform can enable them to collect rent and remit to them in Ireland in euro? I believe so. So that's what we're building, like an end-to-end operating system. As long as there's at least two people who want to make investments where they're not based, or in some cases where they're based and they want to co-own an asset together, platform, maybe not immediately, but we'll have something for them. Yeah. And all that can happen in technology. We only have a web app now, but in the future, you can do these things on your phone. And we want to essentially democratize access to investment opportunities to as many people as possible.
Yeah, no, I like everything that you're saying. It's very interesting for me, and I'm sure the audience too, because on the first leg of the challenge that they face trying to send the money and the bank couldn't understand for multiple reasons, women of color, where did they get the money from, is the property real? I find that there is a growing trend where a lot of people are building more trust tech businesses, right? They want to be that intermediary between the people and the property, and even within the local market. So I know in Nigeria, I've come across a couple of companies who have said, look, people want to buy a property, but this developer has said the property is going to be ready in, let's say, 2027 or 2026, and 2027 comes, the property is not ready. 2030 comes, the property is not ready. People are facing this as a serious challenge, and because of that, they lose all faith to invest into property. So it sounds like this platform space you're creating is to solve that problem. It's essentially just let us be your intermediary and let us even help you fight the battles so that you don't need to deal with the banks. Once the bank sees that, look, there is a trust entity that is tied to this transaction, it's going to move very quickly, like you said. And I feel also because property is it moves very quick. You can have a buyer, something you've looked at today. If you don't make a decision within 48 hours, someone else is looking at it, it's gone, right? The trust can also ensure that there are the necessary due diligence within the contract is in place, things that people don't necessarily understand, the fine print, what information is the development company not selling. So I like that you're going into this space. I think it's something that a lot of young people will be excited about. When you drive around Lagos today, you see properties everywhere being built, and you're like, who's building these things? Yes. Who is going to invest in it? And the other day I was saying to someone, I was like, do you think by the time we're 50, you mentioned your grandfather and your mom and how they bought land and houses, etc. Do you think that by the time we're 50, we are going to be very similar in that we'll have houses and build? Or are we just going to be very modern where we just have apartments and we own and we rent and we lease, etc.? I'm very curious to see the trend, but there's so many properties that I think having that trust tech business is very essential. So I like that you actually mentioned that. Yeah. But moving on to more like personal aspects, because as you're speaking, someone who is listening is like, wow, Joe has experience in the investment space. He's read, he's very knowledgeable, etc. But I think someone may be curious to what has brought this resilience, right? And, just for the audience, for clarity, you and I, we were ex-colleagues, like in Paystack. Yes, on the same team, yeah. Exactly. We worked together in Paystack. And, Joe has done multiple things, including HoaQ and the new ideas that are coming up. But the point is, what has brought about this resilience? So you're ex-Paystack, ex-Stripe, and Touch Tech. And when I read your story that you applied to Stripe and then you didn't get in, but as if, a miracle, God being on your side, yeah. You then went to work for a startup, which is Touch Tech Payments. Mm-hmm. And then Stripe acquired that company. Yeah. So you essentially started working for Stripe. What did that teach you about, I don't even want to say it's like, divine providence, but what did that just teach you about like life?
That's the answer.
Yeah.
Divine
providence.
There is a God.
100%.
Right? And I think everybody's on this earth for a purpose. And I feel lucky to have found mine, which is to contribute to the economic prosperity of Africa and Africans, aka the diaspora. If you go to my LinkedIn, that's there. I don't hide it. And like when I was early in my career, I kind of used to hide it because Africa wasn't cool. But I've always had this hunger for more for Africa, and building platform is just, in my opinion, the first step. And I also do believe that technology will play a huge part in the economic prosperity of Africa. And I'm guessing that, God has led me to quit my job drastically in 2016. I had a really good job I was an internal auditor. Keith.
Yeah.
Keith and I worked on the same team at State Street.
You told me.
And I just quit because I'm like, I'm going to work for a startup. I'm going to tech. And everybody thought I had two heads.
You're crazy, yeah.
My mom was like, what the F? Yeah. What do you mean?
Yeah.
You had this really good job and you want to go do this thing. But I don't think it looked irrational back then, but now it makes perfect sense. And the internet is probably the best thing that has happened to Africa, not the world. Like, you saw I was coming to Lagos. You texted me. I think within 10 minutes, we scheduled this thing. And that's because of the internet.
Yeah.
And I feel like I want to be able to apply that to contribute. And I'm using contribution because I know that me alone will not change the continent. There's going to be a lot of people who will do a lot of work. And some people have already started, like Paystack, BigUS. Like, these people are doing the Lord's work. And when we're all economically prosperous, now we can do more. Like, when you go to, like, I grew up in Ireland and nobody's hungry. Now people can think past today. People can think a year, 5 years from now. But if you don't have food in your stomach today, you can't even think about tomorrow. So we need to just cross that first. And then we think next week. Like, I am so fortunate that I can quit my job and I can raise money and I can do all these things. Yeah, it's only God. Let me not just act like I'm a genius. I'm not. But I want to play a part in Africa being better. And I always say, I was pitching, I'm currently fundraising, and I was pitching an investor yesterday. And I'm like, I can't wait to build platforms so that I can go build the next three things. The first one I want to build is I want to build a Pan-African bank.
Okay.
The second one is I want to build, I want to solve air travel in Africa. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to go build airports.
That's really cool.
That's the second one. And the third one is I want to go buy a country. So that
what do you mean buy a country?
Don't worry about that. I'll explain.
What?
So that any African can now come and become a citizen of this country, and they'll have a passport that will enable them to go anywhere they want. Because one thing that I see a lot of people who have money is they want to go buy a passport. You know that guy, is it Tayo? The guy who does the YouTube videos? He bought he spent $150,000 on a Caribbean passport so that he can travel.
Yeah.
Why? Why can't you buy from one of the countries, small country, where we do a lot of work to unlock, bilateral relationships with more countries and come and pay $50,000? That's a direct contribution to that country's GDP. So there's a lot of work we need to do. And I'm super excited to go back to school in the future to go study public policy, because economic empowerment, prosperity is great, but we need to do a lot of work on policy. After policy, then I'm going to go do all these crazy things I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And that's going to be my contribution. I pray that I am around maybe till 90, till 100. I really, really hope so. But I want to live a life worth living, like an exciting life. You know, when I was joining Paystack, if you see my pitch to Ekene, because I didn't know Shola directly. The way I pitched Ekene, I needed a meeting with Shola. When I got on that phone call with Shola, it was like my life depended on it, because I really wanted to work at Paystack. And the things I care about, I go all in. And yeah, I think, you know, there is a higher power above me that guides me in my decisions. Yeah. And I pray that I stay humble enough to achieve all the things I want to do.
No, it's fine. I like that. And, you know, I think when I sit down with a lot of guests and they say, I was able to do this thing, it does ultimately come back to God. God at the center. One of my first speakers, Michael from Stairs, you know, he was giving reference and saying a lot of the things that he does and the direction is all tied to God. And I'm proud to actually hear you say that, because I think it's very easy for a lot of people to take self-credit. Like, yes, you're smart, you're building things, but those things are actually gifts. And to be able to highlight and say, to even know what to do next requires prayer. It requires guidance. It's not just a wake up and go. And I'm also learning that people who tend to do great things, they need that anchor. It's not just I wake up in the morning and I'm moving. You need that like spiritual guidance that is telling you this is the direction, this is the next step, this is that. So I'm happy that you share that, and I'm sure it'll definitely encourage someone in the audience.
Can I just add? You have to believe it, but
Correct.
you also have to do the work.
Correct.
So
yes, no, that's good, because a lot of people pray but they don't execute. Yes.
Faith
and that's
work is
exactly.
there, right?
And I feel that that's also a traditional thing. It's like, oh, just pray. But it's like, no, the gift is within you. Let's get up and let's execute, and the door will open, right? Your idea, and I won't talk too much about it because when something is in seed, but what you said about the buying of passports, and you're seeing a trend with this with a lot of like Nigerians, they go and buy passports from St. Kitts, from Portugal, etc.
That's the one.
I get it, because the green passport has its limitations to be able to travel, which I think is ridiculous. But why not, as you said, get a passport from another African country where there is so much strength, where we can travel easily within ourselves? It's still very difficult to like get flights to, like, if I want to go to Sao Tome, for instance, like, why do I have to go multiple steps to go somewhere that is just like 2 hours away? So if someone can solve these things, it essentially just makes us stronger. But speaking about cross-border and Pan-Africanism, do you feel that the way that you've grown up has helped you think about ideas differently? So you're Togolese by birth, but grew up in Ireland. You've been able to travel. Do you feel that all these different cultural experiences has shaped the way that you perceive and think about things?
Yes. And I've been very fortunate to experience a lot of cultures. I remember the first time I went to the US. I was 23 years old, and I was like, wow. So the first place I went was Miami. And the more you travel, you get to see and meet people with different experiences, different views in life, and it really shapes the way you see the world. And also the first time I've been, so like I was born in Togo, like relatively poor country, and then I went to Ireland, which is like one of the, you know, best performing countries in the world. So like two extremes. First time I went to a non-West African country was South Africa, and I couldn't believe how amazing South Africa was. And I'm like, wait, these people are hiding something from us. And then you go from that. I remember when I joined, you were doing and then you go to Kenya. You go to the coast of Kenya, like, wait, guys, there's something that they're hiding. Like, Africa is so beautiful. I don't think I've taken a holiday outside of Africa in about 3 or 4 years. I haven't. Where am I going? I go to Lamu.
Yeah, correct.
I go to Accra.
Correct.
I go to Dakar. Like, the continent is so beautiful. And I really, really encourage more Africans to see the continent. But, again, it's not easy because we've put so many barriers in front of ourselves. Like Dangote needs 30 plus visas. This is the richest man on the continent. So who am I? Again, I'm privileged because I have an Irish passport. I can get to more African countries than anybody with a Nigerian passport, which is very sad.
Yeah.
And we need to really bring those borders down, really and truly, so that when my Nigerian friend is trying to go to Tanzania, so right now, Tanzania has blocked Nigerians to get a visa. What do you mean?
Yeah.
Like, what do you mean? Because one nefarious person?
Thank you.
You can't do that.
Thank you.
Like, we're supposed to be unified. We're supposed to be together. And that's why I want to go to public policy. If the Togolese government doesn't take me, I'm sure another African country will take me to come do this work. And this work is very important. If we can bring down our barriers, we can achieve so much more. And we can be stronger together. And this work has to be done. I love to live in a world where we can just once you step on the continent, life is soft. Life is not soft. Life can be much, much softer. And trade will happen more easily and economic prosperity will come because there's some people that just don't want to come to Nigeria because
they don't know what to expect.
The airport,
Let's not even
we're not gonna go there.
Exactly.
But we have to do a lot of work. Like a lot of Africans coming to Nigeria need to get a visa. Like, guys, come on. We have to. Yes, some people will tell you there's reasons. The politicians will tell you their reason. But let's try Africa visa free for a year. Compare it to the previous year and see what happens. I think we should just do the experiment and remove the borders, like the Nigerian Benin border. Remove all the borders. Get everybody. Maybe you don't want to
security.
Yeah. But let's truly remove the borders. Once we see your passport, pass. Once you're an individual, just pass. Maybe goods we can check, all that kind of stuff. And let's just try for a year. People will cry. But I think it's for the betterment of the continent. And I love this continent so much that I'm willing to dedicate the rest of my career to it.
Yeah, so Joe, you're saying a lot of interesting things I align with. Radical, someone may listen like, oh my God, how can you say remove the border, security, etc. But you're saying a lot of interesting things. Pelumi Nubi, who did that tour, she was saying that she had more border issues when it came to moving across African countries. And that didn't surprise me, right? Because it's just how we're wired and how we're built. Now, when you say that policy is so critical, because I have a development background, I've always known this, from A levels, and which is why I said I'm going to study development studies. I've always known that policy formulation is a thing. Yeah. Am I in the space? No, I'm in tech. Why am I in tech? I'm in tech because first I want to understand how products are built. Yeah. Learn the hard things and then apply that to government work, right? Yes. So GovTech, for instance, is a space that nobody ever talks about. So this thing you're saying about passports, border control, it's all part of GovTech, right? If you're saying remove the Nigeria-Benin border, is there some sort of verification process that by the time you just do a biometric, they have all your information and they can verify this person has passed, we have all his details. So if something bad happens or a crime were to be committed, we can actually track the person that did it because there's this biometric verification. So I agree with you on all these things. I think these are fantastic ideas. It is interesting to see what is going to happen in the next 10 years on the continent. There's after and all these different things, and I need to read up on it. But like you said, why is it that as the year goes on, you hear tomorrow Seychelles has stopped giving Nigerian visas, or Zanzibar? My husband and I went to Zanzibar on holiday, and I think maybe 2 months after, a group of friends wanted to go, we gave them the process of what we did, because it's, you know how they say it's not really, it's a visa, but it's very quick to get.
It's an e-visa.
E-visa. They gave them so much hassle to get this visa. Somewhere we just went to two months ago because a bad apple had gone in to do something. So it's how can we change the narrative one of our people? And I feel that narrative changes when we can empower ourselves, do work together, show a unified front, then you're going to get that global respect because within yourselves, you respect each other and you're building great work. So I think everything you're saying is very futuristic. The people who will listen to get it will get it. I definitely get it, which is why it's we need to have this interview. But speaking on resilience and just the things that you want to do, and I'm rounding up here, you did a startup and then it failed.
How did you know
Oh, yes, I've done my research. It failed. So many people have fallen into that position. They build something. It doesn't go the way that they want to. They give up. But you didn't take that route. Yep. You got up and you're like, okay, what's the next thing? how are you able to overcome that failure?
I think self-awareness. You need to know what you're good at and what you're not good at. And when I reflect back at that time when I was building a startup, I was writing a bunch of stuff. I wasn't selling to customers. And I was aware that, okay, this thing is not going anywhere. So what do I do? That's when I joined TouchTech. I realized that, do I want to own 100% of zero or own a tiny piece of something that's actually going somewhere? So I was self-aware enough to be like, okay, well, I don't know how to build a startup. So let me go work at a startup so that I can actually learn what it takes to build a startup. And that's what I did. I think more people need to be aware of what their limitation is and find ways to cover it. If they can't cover it themselves, which is, I want to build technology, I don't know how to, so I go learn how to code. Or if not, hire the right people. With Platform, I'm building it with this guy called Yao Boache, who's my CTO and co-founder. And this guy is he's one of the best engineers on the continent. I met him at Stripe. He's a Stripe engineer, and Stripe just doesn't hire any engineer anyhow. So this guy's
legit.
He's legit, and I wouldn't be building this thing without him because it's a technology-first product. It's got technology, it's got community, it's got legal. So I have all these things that I can't do. I've managed to hire the best. My legal person, I'll tell you about them after this, but they've helped me from day one because I know that they're great at this and they will do this better than I am. And I rather own a small piece of a big pie than own the whole pie that's worth nothing. So self-awareness is key for anybody. I think more people need to also fail forward. Don't let failure be the reason why you don't try again. We have to keep trying again. We need more people to fail so that they can learn. Failure is the best teacher. Again, the best thing is don't keep failing on the same thing. You learn through trials, and not all trials will work. So you have to keep going. You have to, but again, it's very easy for me to say because I live in London and I made some money and I can afford to say that. For people who can't feed themselves today, it's the only thing they have to, it has to work. So I'm speaking from a place of privilege and I'm fully aware of that. But we need more people to try things. And if they're going to fail graciously. Let's encourage them to go try again. And I think that's the way that we can build Africa. And people who fail and don't want to try again, please share your learnings with the next group of people so that they don't go and make the same mistake that you've made. And I've been saying that even if platform doesn't work, my investors will know that I've given it my best. And they'll probably be giving me congrats. So give it your best, try it, learn from your mistakes really quickly, do it again. We've both worked at a company that doesn't always get everything right, but Paystack is always building products.
Yeah. Regardless.
Paystack is before this interview, we talked about the stuff that I worked on. But Paystack is always trying. And this is a company that's when people look at Paystack has made it. Yeah. Right? Google is now in that AI race. Google is at least $2 trillion company. And Google is always trying. If Google's trying, well, how about you?
Correct.
Right? And I live by that every day. And you might not have the energy daily. And it's okay. It's okay to take a pause every now and again. But this company has to be better in our lifetime, please. I don't want... please, I'm begging. It has to, in our lifetime.
I like that you said, keep trying. And if you fail, don't be afraid to share what went wrong. Yeah. So someone who wants to get into the space then has an idea and they can also rectify. And I feel the beauty about failure is just you're doing something right. I don't even see failure. The word is the word, but for me, it's congratulations, you're doing something right because you've been able to identify a gap. You've been able to see that, okay, it doesn't work this way. There's a different iteration I need to move on to. It's funny that you said, if Google is always trying, if Paystack is always trying, who are we to not keep trying? Yeah. And that's the thing, right? Write multiple ideas. The last time I had Shola on the podcast, he said, if you're not failing, you're not doing anything. And I think that's a very interesting, piece of information to just hold in your head to empower yourself. Okay, if I'm not failing, then I'm not trying hard enough. Correct. So I like that. Before we close, what is your favorite quote and why? But for someone who wants to start on HoaQ, that is startup, they want to put that company on the website, what is the onboarding process for them to be able to kickstart?
I will answer that question first. So if you want HoaQ to consider your company for investment, go to our website, HoaQ.co, and fill the form. There's a form there. It's very simple. Fill it and we'll review it. We don't get back to every startup because there's just so many, but we will at least look at a company. And while we don't do this yet, we want to be in a position to, companies that don't fit the HoaQ thesis, we want to be able to share it with other communities, other funds. So yes, I encourage people to fill the form. The quote that I live by every day is, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Again, that's community. There's so much power in community, and we can do a lot more when we all come together for a common purpose.
Yeah, I really like that. Thanks. And I think you also live by that because you mentioned your tech and your legal person. And something I wanted to highlight on that for the audience is it just shows get the best minds, get the best people who can actually support your vision, and you'll go far.
Also, shout out to NewBK for being a goat.
Yeah, shout out to NewBK. He's a great person. But no, Joe, it's been so amazing having you. You've shared so much about just life lessons, challenges, building the continent, the things that we can do to solidify. How can we change that representation of how great of the people we actually are to the world, and on HoaQ and the investor community and lessons. And I think the audience is really going to benefit from this. So guys, you have it here. You've listened to Joke on all things HoaQ and just the investor community in general. If you're interested, you can follow him on his social media. Joe, what are your social media handles?
It's at Joe Kinvi everywhere.
Okay, and for HoaQ?
It's a HoaQ Club on all your socials. So LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, X. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And guys, I look forward to hosting you. And for the next sessions, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on X, LinkedIn, and TikTok, and of course on Instagram. And I look forward to speaking to you next time. Bye.